Welcome, Cincinnati Bengals fans. It's your boy Ace Boogie. Today I'm going to do a what if scenario on what if Carson Palmer never got hurt in the playoffs against the Steelers in 2005. So basically I'm going to turn off the injuries here in Madden. We're going to do a simulation to see how the Bengals would fare with a healthy Carson Palmer against the 2005 Steelers. So obviously I'm going to go ahead and set an objective for 11 wins this season. Obviously, the Bengals went 11-5, so we're going to see if we can match that 11-5 record. So, a lot of this roster is going to be from 2005. So, it's going to actually be Carson Palmer, Rudy Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, Chad Johnson, TJ Husmanzada, Chris Henry. So, all of the regulars. Obviously, they had to use some of the player models that already existed because a lot of these players were not in the actual database. So what I did was I used a combination of Madden 06 ratings, which is the year after 2005, and then I also used any Madden Ultimate Team player cards that were available for use. So for Carson and Chad, they had some. For everyone else, I filled it out. Got my boy over here. Obviously, David Pollock didn't play, but Odell Thurman definitely had my boy in there. Brian Simmons is a guy that's definitely overlooked in Bengals history as far as how good he was. He was a 91 in Madden. I think he's one of the forgotten good players. So what I'm going to do here is sim to mid-season, and we'll see where our record is. Make sure that you guys like, comment, and subscribe to my page at New Stripe City. We're going to try to get this video 100 likes. If we can do 100 likes, if this doesn't work out, then I will do another video saying if we can get the Bengals to win in the playoffs or possibly go to the Super Bowl. But like I said, if you guys like this video, the sky's the limit. So let's take a look. We're over here in week 9. We're going to look at some of the stats. Obviously, Carson Palmer threw for 2,200 yards, 23 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Doing pretty good. I mean, Carson had one of his best years ever for us in 2005. Rudy Johnson also playing pretty good, 700 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Chad Johnson is going off, 931 receiving yards, 12 touchdowns. And it's only week 9. That's kind of crazy. TJ is doing pretty well with 468 and 5. This offense is looking like it pretty much did in 2005. On defense, we have some surprises here. Brian Simmons, not a surprise, but Caleb Miller, I'm not sure why exactly he was starting over Odell Thurman. I don't know what happened there. But let's take a look at some of the other rankings here. It looks like the Bengals, looks like we're 6-2. The Steelers are 5-2, Ravens are 4-3, and the Browns are 2-6. So what the original ranking was in real life is we ended at 11-5. The Steelers ended at 11-5. The Ravens were 6-10, and the Browns were 6-10. So let's see if we can get that to recreate that standings that happened in 2005. So we're just going to go ahead and get ready to fast forward here, and then we'll pull up our next thing. So as you can see, we're 9-4. We're in the hunt. The Steelers are also 9-4, but they're actually in the wild card spot. So pretty interesting there. And we're going to go ahead and advance to each week. Now we're in the playoffs. So the Bengals made the playoffs. It looks like we're 11-5. Steelers are 11-5. Ravens are 6-10. Browns, however, are 2-14. But we'll take it. That's pretty close. That's pretty spot on. It's kind of crazy that it ended up working out like that. So things are looking up. I wonder if we have the wild card. It looks like we're actually not going to have the wild card. So we're actually going to have the bye week, which is something that was different from what happened in 2005. We actually didn't have the bye week and had to play in the wild card matchup against the Steelers. So unfortunately, this playoff schedule is going to be a little bit different. But with the season, let's take a look at those. So Carson Palmer threw for 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, had a 114 passer rating. So this is looking pretty legit. I mean, he definitely had a good year. I'm not sure of the exact numbers. If you do, comment them below in the comments. I'd love to see what he actually did. Rudy Johnson with 1501. That sounds about right. 8 touchdowns. Chris Perry with 14 touchdowns. Sounds absurd, though. Chris Perry was decent, but definitely didn't have that many touchdowns, so I don't know what happened there. Carson Palmer rushed for 137 yards. TJ ends up with 984 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. Chad Johnson had a monster year, 1,500 receiving yards, 18 touchdowns. We know that didn't happen in 05, but Chad was a beast. 1,500 yards was not out of the question. Reggie Kelly had more receiving yards than I initially thought. And another thing that people forget about this line, how many studs they had. Eric Steinbach, you had Levi Jones, Willie Anderson. These were some key players. And then another guy on defense that was overlooked was Justin Smith. He had 14 sacks. One of the big guys on here, Torrey James had 6 interceptions. He was also a guy that was overlooked. So yeah, it looks like Brian Simmons ended the season with 92 tackles. So, this Bengals 05 defense wasn't amazing. They just did a good job of, creating turnovers and doing what they could. They weren't, by any means world beaters like our defense is now. So let's take a look at how the Bengals offense finished. And I believe we were a top 3 team in 2005, and that's what's being reciprocated here. You see the Bengals as a top overall offense in the league. Let's take a look at our ranking in the passing game and rushing game. Let's see if we can see how those things kind of line up. So it looks like in terms of passing, it looks like we're in the top 10. So that's not too bad for a simulation of based off of players from 2005. This entire roster is 2005. And it looks like our rushing offense was pretty good as well. So the Bengals were really balanced just like we were in 2005. One of the top scoring offenses with 32 points per game. So everything's looking pretty good right now. Let's check out this defense. This defense was about middle of the pack, which, is about right. Looks like they had 44 sacks and I believe double-digit interceptions. It looks like about 14. I think they actually had more, but, you can't really predict how the actual Bengals defense is going to play out. They didn't have Odell Thurman in there. I know he was pretty instrumental in some of those turnovers, but not too bad. Let's take a look. Yeah, not too bad at all. Like, they actually did pretty good in terms of turnovers and sacks and everything. So, not too bad. Let's take a look at some of the yearly awards. So, what's crazy is Shaun Alexander was the MVP, and I looked up the MVP for 2005, and also was Shaun Alexander. That's kind of crazy. It's kind of a blast from the past looking at these guys. You see guys like Aaron Brooks, Brett Favre, but Carson Palmer comes in at number 6 on the overall MVP race. So that's pretty cool to see that happen there. So Carson definitely obviously had a great year. I'm just gonna scroll down here. Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Kerry Collins. Okay, some old folks we used to know. And then let's look at the coach of the year. Obviously, Mike Zimmer wasn't a coach at this time, and Marvin Lewis was down there. Obviously, you can't control the coaches in this area unless you control everyone, which wasn't necessary for this demonstration. But Carson Palmer finishing second in the Offensive Player of the Year for the AFC. That's pretty impressive, right behind Brady. And on defense, Justin Smith. Like I said, a lot of people overlook Justin Smith. The fact that he started out with the Bengals, it's almost kind of like that Willie Anderson and Corey Dillon kind of effect where people forgot where they came from. Rookie of the year, obviously Chris Henry wasn't a rookie around this time, but with the player model used, he actually was good enough to, garner top 5 consideration. And then defensive rookie of the year, obviously Justin Smith wasn't a rookie, but he was good. Obviously these player models did not match up. But pretty cool to see that, the Bengals had some top guys. Rudy Johnson comes in number 7th as the best 7th best running back. And Chad Johnson comes in at number 1, which you can't really argue in the AFC back then that he didn't, kind of rule over everyone. Marvin Harrison, wow. These are some names here. And then Willie Anderson comes in 2nd for the best offensive line. And Eric Steinbach, that's another guy, man. Rich Brom, this line was loaded. Like, I don't even think Carson should have been sacked. Jonathan Thornton, a good guy of mine. If you guys haven't heard, I've actually interviewed John Thornton back in the day, probably about 3 months ago. So if you haven't heard that, make sure you go back and check that out for sure. Man, Torrey James definitely had a Pro Bowl year, I believe, around this time, so he did pretty good. I'm not seeing anything much for the kicker, and yeah, let's see how we can do. So it looks like we actually had our bye week, so it looks like we're gonna actually have to take on the Chargers, which is somewhat of a little bit of a twist there. So I'm not sure how I can make it to where the Bengals actually have to play the Steelers with me doing, simulations. But hey, it was worth it just to see. So, we didn't have everything fall our way, but hey, let's see how it goes. So the Steelers are playing the Colts, which they actually ended up doing the next round. Cardinals, Vikings, Chargers, Raiders, Giants, Saints. So we're currently awaiting our next matchup. So we'll see who wins out of these two with the Steelers. And it looks like the Steelers were actually defeated by the Chargers. So we're actually going to have to take on the Chargers this next game. So let's see. We'll just go ahead and advance, and let's see if we get past there. Let's see. Wild card week. Actually, this is me simulating the wild card week. My bad. And then I'm going to simulate this next week. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. So this is just me taking a look at the actual schedule. So, yep. But actually, for some reason, it looks like the Steelers won. So Steelers, Patriots. Okay, so they beat the Colts. Okay. So the Steelers are taking on the Patriots. We're taking on the Chargers. Let's see how this goes. So with a healthy Carson Palmer, will the Bengals make this playoff run? Let's take a look at it. Let's see. Let's go ahead and advance here. And Divisional Playoffs. Okay. Oh, and it looks like we did not make it. Oh man. Looks like the Pro Bowl is in our future, unfortunately. So we did what we could. We tried to go out there and get a win, but unfortunately our Bengals did not pull it off. Looks like the Steelers and Chargers unfortunately made it to the AFC Championship, and it looks like we lost by 1 touchdown. Looks like San Diego won 31-24. Carson Palmer actually had a pretty decent game, 294, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Can't complain. It looks like Drew Brees was actually leading the Chargers. And Rudy Johnson had a decent game. Chad went off. 7 receptions, 122 yards. How do we lose this game? Ugh. So our what if with Carson Palmer on the 2005 Bengals was a failure. If this video gets 100 likes, I'll redo it again. Take it easy.